Thank you very much.
Welcome by you here this afternoon to give our concert, which is in the form of a play. It's all about that part of the East End, in the Whitechapel, in the Whitechapel area, just before the Second World War, that was commonly known as the Jewish East End, because of the very high concentration of Jewish people who lived in that area. And it's part of our programme of work as a theatre company which is dedicated to honouring the memories of the older section of the community. So for this particular show, we're concentrating on the Jewish community.
I'm sure we'll love that. Thank you very much.
Well, it's very nice to be here. How did we get our stories? Well, we went to places like this and we asked people in their 70s, 80s and 90s to volunteer stories about what was it like when they were young in Whitechapel in the 1920s. From all the stories, we made an enormous long script that we had to cut down to become today's show of about 45 minutes in length. Our performers, Linda Poland,
hello,
myself, Charles Wagner, and Gillian Gallant, will take on a number of characters in order to give an overall impression of the Jewish East End based on the memories we've heard. So sit back, relax and enjoy yourself as we take you through memories of the Jewish East End. Thank you very much.
In the Whitechapel area where I grew up, they were all Jewish people. Practically our whole street was full of Jews.
Yes.
And the characters, what about the characters?
There was Schlumpy the Coke Man who did removals with his horse and car. Now Schlumpy was a short man, immensely tough and strong. Schlumpy had a regular ringside seat at the Premier Land, you know, where they had the boxing. We used to see every Sunday afternoon all the big contests, Harry Mitzler, Kid Berg, Benny Kaplan.
In our turning there was Benjamin the glazier. He carried his glass on his back. He was a drunk, but he never broke a pane of glass putting windows in. And in the synagogue, his voice used to soar above the others in the chanting and the prayers. Well, he didn't drink on Shabbos, did he?
Old Solomon Levy, tra-la-la-la-la-la.
Oh, Solomon Levy, you must remember him. He was a character who came down several streets, and he had with him a chap who used to play on the tutor, the penny whistle. Now us, we lived on the second floor. We used to throw coins out to him, and sometimes as a prank, we used to heat the coins up in a shovel over the fire. We'd throw them out, he'd hold up his hat. It was all full of holes where the coins fell through.
There was Prince Monolulu with his feathered headdress. I got a horse, I got a horse.
There was Larry the lamplighter, who lit the gas at dusk. And in the houses themselves, every little window was a little business. Mrs. Stein might not have had carpets on her floor, but she'd always got a few sacks of potatoes to sell.
Next door there was a person who had in a window ribbon that my mother used to buy to do my plaits up with. Haberdashery.
And next door to that there was, oh, I remember this so well. Well, they were rich, weren't they? They had remnants of cloth to sell.
Oh.
Every little window was a sort of business.
And all the shops were Jewish shops, 100% Jewish.
And all the residents bought on tick, on the book. Pay when you can. There was Friedman's, the grocer's, on the ground floor. There you could get beautiful pickled herrings out of those great big wooden Cooper's barrels.
I remember the aroma, the smell of the cucumbers, the pickled cucumbers.
I remember walking through the lane, Petticoat Lane, big sacks of bagels. They were hot and the smell was gorgeous.
And Mrs. Mark, she sold herrings down the lane. She'd stand there with 7 or 8 of those great big barrels all around her. Winter and summer she stood there, skinning those herrings and chopping them up.
When I was about 5 or 6, there were steaming hot peanuts in these great big sacks. You get a handful of peanuts, they were boiling, they were lovely.
I remember the aroma, the fragrance and the taste of those peanuts.
Particularly on Friday, there were chicken stalls.
And I remember this woman used to come over. She'd pick up a chicken, she'd feel a bit here and she'd feel a bit there. Oi!
What?
You remind me of my daughter. She goes out with fellas that feel a bit here and feel a bit there. And they never buy.
Cheeky devil.
There was the man with the baked potato. He trundled a little barrel and you'd have a lovely big hot baked potato with salt and vinegar for a penny.
Hot potato, salt and vinegar. And there was a man going with a barrel with all sorts of toffee that he made at home. Big toffee with nuts in it. All really lovely things and ever so cheap.
But of course, nothing was cheap to people who didn't have anything. We were desperately poor.
But people were very generous. Everybody helped everybody else.
Isaac, I've cooked too much fish. You have this.
They always made the excuse that they cooked too much, or something like that.
And Mrs. Friedlander, who lived in our road, always stood outside her door Saturday midday. Well, the reason was that I used to go to the baker's for the schund. And Mrs. Friedlander knew that I was going for the schund.
Young man, are you going for the schund? I thought so.
When I used to come back, I'd see Mrs. Friedlander still standing there outside. Mum! Mum! Mrs. Friedlander's still outside. So we used to take some out and give it to Mrs. Friedlander.
For me? You shouldn't have. Thank you.
She'd say as though it were unexpected.
La 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 la.
My mother would never sit down and have her meal unless she knew that her next door neighbour would have something as well. She did everything. She was the most wonderful woman. I never heard her voice raised in anger.
Hatskele, speel mir gezatzkele, Hocha nora mea bia schwatzka, Orim ist nicht gut. Urim is nicht gut, lo mir mich mit zemmen nicht gerne blut.
We had 2 large rooms, and they always looked beautiful.
We had what they called a schluffbunk. It was a wooden thing. You sat on it in the daytime, at night you pulled it out, it made a bed.
My sister and I slept on that.
Papa and I, we had the little off room, and we partitioned it with a curtain so the boys could sleep there too.
Funnily enough, I never saw my brothers, and they never saw us in our underclothes. That was ever done, I can't imagine.
In our living room, we had a beautiful high mantelpiece with a velvet cover with velvet fringes and pom-poms. It was wine-coloured. On either end, brass candlesticks. And, of course, photographs of the family.
My father was a presser. He had been a tailor.
Gentleman's work, but then my eyesight failed me and now I have to work from home. Pressing.
He heated the irons over the fire and the whole room became steamy. He pressed those trousers one after the other. And all this in our living room, our general room, as you might say, where we ate and slept and washed and did. We even took baths there sometimes. And all the time the children were running in and out and getting under your feet.
My brother was very politically minded. He wanted to make life easier for the workers in the East End.
He did a lot of street whitewashing of slogans, spoke on street corners, went on marches.
When I was about 12 years old, I joined him and went to hear some of the big, important speakers.
Sometimes he'd be up half the night reading.
Using up electricity for heating and lighting, which we couldn't afford.
Papa used to want to throw the books and the boy out.
This led to many noisy arguments, and many times my mother had to stand between them.
Bless das Kinderlein.
My mother was the most wonderful manager.
I used to buy bones at that time from the butcher. They weren't like the bones you get today, they had meat on them. Well, I'd take the meat off and I'd mince it and I'd make a soup. We had a coke stove in those days, a coal fire and an oven at the side, and the saucepans would sit on top. Those bones would be boiling away all day with barley or whatever.
It was a remarkable thing. Out of nothing she could make a meal.
I remember all these.
My younger brother used to come home from school around 4:30.
I'd have a cup of tea, half an hour's play, and then I'd go to Hayder until about 8 o'clock at night. Well, I should imagine that my mother was glad because I was out of her way, like, you know. They crammed it into you, the 5 books, the Sefer Torah. They were stricter than the teachers at school. If you didn't do it properly, they had this big cane. We used to get a terrible wallop off them.
Shema Yisrael Ad Hashem Elokeinu Ad Hashem Echad.
On one occasion, instead of going to Hayder, I went for 3 halfpence into the gallery of the Cambridge Cinema. I bought a halfpenny bag of nuts, 2 bits of toffee, and I spent a delightful 3 hours watching cowboy films.
Once a week in the evening, my mother would bring a group of elderly ladies to the house, and I would teach them English. I had a little blackboard, and they'd sit around in a circle in their long black dresses down to the ankle. First, I would have to address them in very correct Yiddish, which I wasn't very good at. I was the child being polite to them, and then I was the teacher, and they were listening to me. Day-dee-dee-day-dum, day-day-day-day-day-dum.
I used to start preparing for the Sabbath on a Wednesday. If we had a boiling chicken, we'd have the neck that I'd stuff, the liver that I'd chop, and the chicken itself. It was always a good meal. There was always a hot soup.
You know who did the best business at this time? The pawn shop.
The ritual was this. The tablecloth, candlestick, suits, everything went in on a Monday and came out Friday for Shabbos.
Thinking back, outside our house it was white, and before the weekend you'd whiten it, because it used to get dull. You'd whiten your step with whitening. It was like paint, except it came off. You take a cloth, wet it, put it in the whitening, and whiten it all over. My brother and I used to scrub the floor together.
Well, we'd have a turn each scrubbing, and we'd sing. I'd sing while she did a piece of floor, and she'd sing while I did a piece of floor. Sonntag bulbes, Montag bulbes, Dienstag und Mittwoch bulbes.
Donnerstag and Freitag bulbes.
Ober Shabbos in der Novinea bulba kigala. Sonntag weiter bulbes.
My father was a very religious man. He had a lovely white beard. On Friday nights, he used to dress himself up to go to shul. He used to polish up his hat. I remember once, we were on our way, and Father was so proud holding me by the hand. A stone came from we don't know where, and the hat went flying. It was a wonderful shot. But my father was in tears.
It was a very hard existence. But Friday was marvellous. Out came the white tablecloth and the candles.
I always remember Friday nights very well, because my father came into his own. He came home from shul, proud as a peacock. It really was very nice.
Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. L'rei bari hagofen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Chamotze lechem min eretz. De-de-de-de-dum, de-de-de-de-de-de-dum, de-de-de. De-de-de-de-dum, de-de. De-de-de-de-dum-dum.
On Shabbos morning, I would look out of the window and see the water cart filling up with water on the corner. The vision was of absolutely empty streets, because on Shabbos morning there was no traffic, no sound. Everybody seemed to respect the Sabbath, whether they went to the synagogue or not.
You collected the Schollen Saturday midday. You went to the baker's. You went through a yard. There was one in Chickshand Street. You give him a metal disc and they give you the Schollen. Well, it was extremely heavy. I used to like exercising at that time, and I thought that carrying it would make me stronger, more heavily muscled.
And that would be a hot meal, for you weren't allowed to cook on the Sabbath. Your meals would have had to been cold otherwise. You weren't allowed to switch the lights on. We used to call in a non-Jewish person to light our fires. We had this little lad called Fred.
Well, in my early years, I used to go around all the Jews, lighting their fires from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, which was their Shabbos or Shabbos, whatever they call it. We used to go in, we get the fire going, and then we go back and forth all Saturday, keeping it going. We did maybe 6 or 7 houses. We was only little kids, don't forget. And then sunset, well, that was finished as far as the Jews were concerned, and you'd go for your money. A penny at the most.
After the tournament, we had glasses of lemon tea, poured from the great shining samovar, and we drank it through a lump of sugar held between our teeth.
My father was Polish. He came from a village near
Dos Ziegele's gefallen Handen, dos wird sein dein Ballon, ruhig in Kosnet Handen, schlaf mein Kinderlein, schlaf in
There were pogroms, and the Jews were persecuted unmercifully. We fled for our lives onto a boat. My mother brought the brass candlesticks, which we still have here, some pots, some pans, and some bedding. You know, a quilt. We were 2 weeks coming to England on the deck of a boat. My mother had a small baby in her arms, and how she managed I do not know. It was a rough crossing. We were all ill. I was seasick. My father, he tried to comfort me, to brighten me up a bit. We landed in the docks in the east end of London, and we were taken to the shelter in Mansell Street.
I remember.
Where we were kept until we could find someone to take care of us, to give us a home. At the immigration, the customs people asked my mother her name.
Baranowski.
How do you spell it?
When my uncle who'd come to meet us said, my name's Goldstein. You Silverstein.
Silverstein.
When were you born?
7 weeks before Pesach.
You must have a date with the month and the year.
Ah, have I been tired?
But my uncle got us settled into a house. A house, it was one little room and a kitchenette downstairs. We didn't have a cradle or a cot. So my mother had one of those orange boxes, you know, like a little crate, and she used to put the baby into that. It was rat-infested, that house. We lived there for about 2 years. My uncle wanted me to be a traveler with hats, but I couldn't understand a word of English. My uncle says, all you have to say is very nice, very cheap. So I used to go into each millinery shop and they'd say,
how much?
very nice, very cheap.
Yes, but how much?
And then a Yiddish woman who heard this at the back said,
Wie viel kostet?
oh, it cost us. So I knew if they said,
How much?
I'd have to give them the price.
Ah.
That's how I learned the language. Well, things gradually got a bit better, and I finally started my own business.
All his brothers and sisters used to visit at weekends. We'd gather in one house. Families were very close. If a brother or a sister didn't turn up, somebody was dispatched to find out why. We made our own pleasures in those days.
Ja, still, mach nicht kein Gewider, Der Rebbe geht schon tanzen wieder. Schau, still, mach nicht kein Gewalt. Der Rebbe geht schon tanzen bald. Oh, lass alle was tanzt, tanzen doch die Welt. Lo mir alle Blättchen mit den Händen. Oh, lass alle was tanzt, tanzen doch die Welt. Lo mir alle Blättchen mit den Händen. Schau, still, mach nicht kein Gewalt. Die Rebbe geht schon tanzen bald.
It was card playing amongst the grown-ups. Solo.
So, who hasn't put in the kitty yet?
By my life, I put in already.
Come on, I'm sitting here like a golem with the ace of the jack in my hand.
Believe me, mine enemies should have such a partner. Next week, better you should go to the pictures instead.
Ah!
Mostly the women didn't play cards. I don't know what they did. Probably talked about marrying off their daughters. In the meantime, the children played in the streets.
I give to you a paper of pins to show you how my life begins. If you will marry me, me, if you will marry me.
School day. My first day, the building seemed huge to me.
Register. Name.
Lifthoff.
Name.
Petrovsky.
Name.
Hirschman.
Name.
Colin.
Name.
Silverstein.
Name.
Perlmutter. You had to sit up very straight in long rows and not lean on the desks. Teacher was very stern, wearing a black dress buttoned right up to the neck.
Once two is two. Two twos are four.
My first day I went to school, a little boy began to cry very much indeed, and the teacher pulled him out of his seat. And there was a puddle on the floor. He had wet the floor. So she set him on her table and whipped his legs with a ruler until they were really and truly red. He was only 5, a tiny little thing. And to this day I can still hear the child sobbing. He sobbed his little heart out.
1, 3, 3, 2, 3. I remember when I first went to school, they had like big glass windows, like partitions between the rooms. Well, if you sat at the back and you got fed up, you could stand up and wave to the girls in the next room.
10 threes are 30, 11 threes are 33, 12 threes are 36.
Once 4 is 4.
My brother was a year and a half younger than me, and he kept sitting outside in the street and calling out.
Frida, I want to come to school.
Shh! You have to wait until you're bigger.
What are you doing? Pay attention when I speak to you.
She shook me thoroughly by the shoulders, and no matter what you were wearing, it got torn. You'd come home with a new dress torn, and your mother would tell you off and all the rest of it.
At lunchtime, all the mums would wait outside the gates. We used to push a bagel or a pretzel through the railings to the children for their lunch.
Some of the teachers were strict, but most of them were lovely. Lovely.
Flowers in bright dresses, glorious sight, heads gently nodding, sun high and bright, butterflies flitting from flower to flower, heads gently nodding, resting in bower.
I believe that although it sounds sentimental, the most important thing in the world is love. Now, I had my own class and I taught them everything. They gave me the youngsters, the 8 to 9-year-olds.
Please, sir, would you like to come visit my garden? I live at the buildings.
Well, of course I'll come. I accompanied the little girl home. We climbed about 5 or 6 flights of stairs to her apartment.
Oh,
Mama, my teacher.
oh, how do you do?
The little girl took me to her garden. There was a flower pot on a windowsill. And she looked at it as though it were the Garden of Eden. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, she is very, very proud of it.
Inside myself I was crying. It was very, very poignant.
The French
forgetful yet away, whose names sind noch nie. Warum bringt zum Winter, ist fast
Sometimes I would go with my mother to the Yiddish theatre, the Pavilion. I remember seeing one play called The Dibber. I didn't know what it meant, but my mother explained it to me later.
We used to go in the gallery, threepence each I think it was, always a full house, always packed. It was lovely. I remember one play very well indeed. It all took place in a house, and in one part of the house there was all the merriment of a party, and in the other part of the house there was all the grief of a death. Well, it sums up what life's all about, really, doesn't it? Laughter and tears.
I remember seeing that, and we both came out weeping, my mother and I.
1, 2, 3, a leery, my ball's gone in the airy. Don't forget to give it to Mary, not to Charlie Chaplin.
Here! What are you doing here?
Thought you'd moved away.
I have, I'm just visiting. Well, my uncle still lives in the buildings.
Oh.
What's it like, Clapton?
And what's your new school like?
What, St John's? Oh, it's very nice there. I get beaten up 3 times a day. After breakfast, after lunch and after tea. I'm the only Jewish boy there.
Oh.
The first day I'm there, the teacher says, Silverstein, isn't it? You're the Jewish boy, aren't you? You see, he let them all know he didn't want any Jewish boys there.
Play cracker nuts.
At Pesach time, we'd all play out in the street. We'd have those little round nuts. You got 30 nuts for a halfpenny. And you had a shoebox with big holes and little holes. You had to get the nuts in. Well, if your nut went in a little hole, you got 10 nuts back. If it went in a big one, you only got 5.
The most beautiful thing about living round here, just before Pesach, we get an old bucket, make holes in it, fill it with coals, and go around all the flats in the buildings, shouting, Amen.
Amen.
Here, everybody knows everybody else is like one big family. Up there in Clapton, yuck. Pesach time is the worst. As I go to school, the boys shout, you killed Jesus, and I throw stones at them. Well, I don't know what they mean. And I don't understand why it only happens in springtime. I run from one dustbin to another, protecting myself with dustbin lids.
I went to school in what they call the Lane then. Old Castle Street School. It was a lovely school, and every year we used to do something special for Empire Day. One year we had a lovely tableau. All the colonies and everything were represented, and I was Miss Ireland. They dressed us up in little green aprons. I remember ever so plainly, we had a Jewish girl as Britannia. Her mum and dad lived down the lane. They kept a butcher's shop, I think. She had this lovely golden hair all hanging down, and she stood right at the top of this tableau. And then at the back of the school was the buildings, the flats. All the mums and dads used to stand at the windows watching. And most of those parents were foreigners, you know. But they stood and watched us anyway, because we were so entertaining.
La 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 la. I was lucky with my schooling. I loved school. I was good at it. So good that when I was about to leave, the headmaster called on my mother.
Well, your daughter shows such promise, you ought to keep her on until she's 16.
Oh, what do you want to do then?
I didn't want to stay. I didn't like the idea of wearing a uniform, while all of my friends were dressed up in their clothes, looking rather smart. I wanted to start living. I think I better leave. He gave me a lovely report. I've kept it to this day.
Frida's record is exemplary. She is possessed of a high sense of duty. She's an extremely well-bred and sensitive girl. She attacks everything given to her with courage and enthusiasm. Her mental caliber is such that she will render efficient service to her employers.
Someone came up to the school, wanting a girl for the office. Just one girl. The headmaster recommended me. I kept the books, did his typing.
Answer these and take a copy. Oh, I shall be out for the rest of the day.
To take a copy, I used to dampen the typewritten letter and put it in this press.
Post these.
It wasn't really very much of a job, so I looked around to see what my friends were doing.
My first job was in a gown shop in Whitechapel. They were making evening dresses. When I first come, they said...
Can you make a cup of tea?
Well, of course I could make a cup of tea at home. But here it was a great big teapot. I hadn't got a clue how to get on with it.
Blimey! She can't even make tea!
And they had like shovels to put the tea in with. My tea never tasted like their tea. It never come out right.
My first job was short and sharp. I left school on the Friday and started work on the Sunday morning. It was next door to where I lived. They was making signboards. By the end of the week, my fingers were bleeding. On Friday night, the boss gives me a whole £50. What's this? Do you want me to get something for you?
No, that's your wages.
That's my what? My mother was giving me 2 and 6 when I was still at school. I said, good day, and that was my lot. Well, next I went to work in Victoria Park Road for a Mr. Loss, Joe Loss's dad. He was deaf. He sent me out with a barrow to pick up some wood. Little did I know, they load up this barrow with about 2 tons of plywood. And I'm only a little kid, don't forget. Ooh, I'm coming round the tram lines, round Shoreditch Church and Hackney Road, when the wheel of the barrow gets stuck in the tram line, and I can't get it out. The wheel comes off, and the place is scattered with plywood. I didn't take any notice. I got on the tram, I went back up the Victoria Park Road. Mr. Loss said,
So, where's the wood?
in Shoreditch, you take me for a donkey. I'm not a donkey.
You come here asking for work, I give you
He started
work.
telling me off. I said a rude word under my breath.
I heard that, get out.
Those were the words I wanted to hear. I grabbed my jacket and I ran.
When I first left school, being the oldest daughter, Mother thought...
You've got a bit of common sense. I think we'll send you to take an apprenticeship. You can learn to be a florist.
Oh, I was thrown in the deep end, I can tell you. They gave me green welly boots, a green waterproof apron. They dumped me down in a cellar. I had to open up a great big bag of moss. It was running alive with worms, and water was going all over the place. I said, here, what's all this about?
Well, you've got to start at the bottom, haven't you?
Oh.
Pick up that piece of barrel. I want you to moss that up to make a circle out of it for a wreath.
You have to make all your own shapes from bits and pieces of wood and so on and so forth. Well, at the end of 2 years' apprenticeship, I was still only on 2.5 crowns a week. So Mother said...
I think you've had enough. We can earn more from you if we take a little shop of our own.
So, we opened our very own flower shop. And I became the buyer for the business.
I was sent to my father's factory to learn tailoring. I was put under the direction of old Harry.
Now then, you've got to learn how to hold a needle. There's a special way of holding your fingers when you sew a thing.
Well, there's no thread in it.
That's right, practice on that.
They put me on a plain piece of cloth and a needle with no thread in it for days and days and days. Hat dat Sonneter Schneider, hat dat Sonneter Dach, hat dat Sonneter Schneider, hat dat Sonneter Dach, an ganze Woche, verdient dat Gilden mit der Lach. I used to take the orders up the West End though. I'd walk the whole length of Balance Road to the London Hospital, Whitechapel. I'd get on the bus to Oxford Circus and I'd carry back a whole roll of cloth on my shoulders on the bus, crawling down the underground with all the people coming out of work. Oh.
I gave up my office job when my father died. I had to help my mother. She needed to find some means of making a living.
I couldn't do it by the tailoring. You needed too many people for that. One person to make this part of a garment, one person to make that part of a garment. You know what I mean. But my niece, she just learned millinery. And so I said to her, like, could you come and work with me, you know, teach me, show me?
I don't know. I'd have to give up my job.
I'm desperate. So, out of pity, you might say, she came. I watched, and slowly, I picked it up. They wore beautiful hats in those days, big brims and lace, and all the edges were wired, you know. Well, I put the hats in the window and the money started to come in.
I'll never forget my mother's first bank book. I walked along with her holding her arm to put away our first savings. She worked her way up gradually.
We worked all night sometimes to finish. Do you know, I can hardly remember a time when I didn't have a needle in my hand.
Mother did the housework, worked in the workshop, took the work in, brought it back again.
Oh, we worked it out between us. We made a lot of lovely hats to take up to the West End, though. We used to pile them into great big bags, bigger than we were sometimes.
Oh, I hated it, because when we got on the train, everybody looked at us. We were so conspicuous.
Where did you get that hat? Where did you get that tie? Isn't it a nobby one and quite the proper style? I should like to have one just the same as that. Wherever I go they shout, hello, where did you get that hat?
Come on, business is business.
We used to go down Oxford Street and the side turnings trying to sell these hats.
Let's see what you've got then.
No, no, no. I'll take that one.
Oh, they'd take 2, sometimes 3, you know.
Anyway, that's the way we went on. And she worked her way up gradually.
Back at the tenement, we had a little shop window on the ground floor, and customers had come in, and I'd say to them, would you like to see how it looks on my daughter? Well, of course, she looked marvellous in them, and they'd all say, oh, yes, very nice, it won't look like that on me. At least they had the sense to know that. And then in the back of the shop, where we had like a little parlour that was a workroom, eventually we had 6, 7, 8, maybe more girls working for us.
I used to look upon these employee girls as friends. People used to say, oh, they'll take advantage, impose on you. But they never did. We used to go for long walks. We'd walk and walk, especially with one particular friend called Millie.
Just walking down the Whitechapel Road.
Hello. Have you been getting along then? It's quite simple. A fella can always get girls anytime. What's it? Would you like a tea?
How many romances blossomed, and marriages, from the Whitechapel Road, going on walks and walks and walks.
The great outing was a pennyworth of chips and a pennyworth of pickled cucumber out of a shop called Johnny Isaac's. All the Jewish girls and boys used to accumulate and have a giggle.
Practically every Sunday morning in summer, we used to take the train to Epsom, and then we'd walk right across the racecourse, all the way to Box Hill.
We had a lovely time. Just a small group of boys and girls, and we'd walk along singing all the songs.
I'm happy when I'm hiking, pack up on my back. I'm happy when I'm hiking off the beaten track. I'm in the open country, tramping all the way.
We'd stop for lunch, we'd find a little place and take a little picnic, and then, well, we'd have to take the train. It was too far to walk all the way back again.
With a real good friend to the journey's end. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles a day.
Oh, it was lovely. We had lots of trips like that.
Saturday night was special. You used to dress up smart, bit of money in your pocket, and off you go, up west, up to the Astoria Charing Cross Road.
All done up in your regalia.
In your very, very best.
A long dress, an off-the-shoulder strap dress, chiffon.
If it was winter, you wore boots and carried your evening shoes in a bag.
Somebody powdered your back, your mother or whoever was available.
And you went to the dance. You felt really good.
You was princess for a night. Are the stars out tonight?
Now, if you saw a girl who could dance, like a nice dancer, you'd keep with her all night.
A girl didn't fall into a boy's lap, you know. I'd pick and choose. Most of the girls did.
Do you want to dance?
Oh.
Maybe high, but I can't see a thing in the sky, 'cause I only have eyes for you.
Tango.
Yes, I only have eyes
like dancing very much.
Can I walk you home?
I've got to be home by 10:30.
I had to be home by 11 till I was practically 18. Otherwise, Daddy came looking for me.
Buzz off!
He'd say that to the boy. Daddy!
Oh, don't you daddy me. You'll come home and that's all there is to it.
If somebody said
Can I walk you home?
you didn't take him in because there was nowhere to take him, the bed was already made for the night, so you stood near the door, in the hallway, the passage.
Well, we couldn't stay there long because her mother was looking out the window. We used to have a bit of a kiss and a cuddle, but nothing more.
Frida,
Yes, Ma.
come right upstairs. Frida,
Yes, Ma.
them stairs ain't chairs. Why does it take you so long to say goodnight? You know I've told you always, it ain't safe to stand in always. Frida,
Yes, Ma.
hand him his hat. Frida,
Yes, Ma.
just leave him flat. In the morning let him phone you, for tonight you'll get pneumonia. Frida,
Yes, Ma.
come right upstairs.
I saw him again at the rabbi's house the next Saturday night. The rabbi and his wife used to invite young people back from the shul, and they had lovely, lovely parties, soirees, and there was dancing to a gramophone. He was a very modern minister. He and his wife would do a tango, and it would be a demonstration tango. Next, he took me to the Savoy Theatre to see Lady Frederick. Well, we hadn't booked, you see.
We were looking around for the booking office when one of the commissionaires for the Savoy Hotel said...
Excuse me, sir, are you wanting tickets to go into the theatre?
And we said,
Oh, yes, thank you so
so
much.
much.
Well, we wanted to give him something.
Oh, no, that's quite all right, sir.
We had the second row of the dress circle. And because it didn't cost anything, well, we had tea at the interval.
And we went mad and bought a programme each. I saw him each night for 3 years. And in all those years, he'd never tell me that we'd get married.
No, I can't get married. If I could be rich one minute and poor the next.
I won't mention it anymore, about getting married. I felt like where there's life, there's hope. I mean, I loved him. I wasn't going to let him go. I only wanted him to say that one day we'd get married. Well, it took him 3 years. One afternoon, walking down Stoke Newington, he stopped outside a big jeweller's.
Which one do you like then?
You're joking?
No, I'm not.
That one.
You like it?
Don't be silly, you haven't got that sort of money.
I'd like to see that ring. Well, put it on your finger then. You like it?
Yes.
Right, we'll call ourselves engaged then. Well, what's the matter?
Why did it take so long?
Oh! Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light glowing in your eyes so blue. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you.
Excuse me.
Mother, this is Sam.
Oh.
I've got a job in furniture. I'm in charge of the veneer department.
Oh.
I'm the foreman come manager.
Oh.
Well, general dog's body, really.
Oh.
I know exactly what work is being made up, what's going out. 300 wardrobes a week. All mahogany with a walnut veneer.
Mazel tov. Nothing was too good for my daughter. I decided to go all out to make it a memorable do. Now who should do the catering? Stearns, Monica and Dan's, La Boheme, Silversteins of Whitechapel, so much choice, I don't know.
Her mother decided to make the wedding herself. Well, people made their own weddings in those days if they couldn't afford it.
I had a very nice dress made. You had to get ready early because they all wanted to have a look at you. All the neighbours and the customers.
They want to see you before you go. Wish you joy.
When we had weddings, Jewish people who'd never seen a top hat went to shul in a top hat. They hired the frock coat from Mostros.
We came back from the shul to the house, but on the way we had to stop off at Boris's studios in the Whitechapel Road.
For a bridal picture, something more is necessary than photography. And behind every bridal portrait is the understanding of the artist and the experience gathered only from a lifetime specialization in wedding pictures.
Oh, he had a marvellous way with people. You felt really relaxed with him. Mind you, he never stopped talking.
He had so much patience. He played about with you and put you just the way he wanted.
Back at the house, there were about 100 people. In those days, weddings were weddings. There'd be a table set out with drinks and cakes. There'd be food and chocolate. You'd have breakfast, you'd have lunch, you'd have a whole full course lunch. And then anybody who wanted to could go home and get changed out of their daytime outfit into their evening outfit, and the rest of us would stay and have tea. And after all that, there was dinner and dancing.
Parents saved their whole lives for a daughter's wedding. Some took out an insurance policy the day that a daughter was born. 2 weeks before the wedding, they drew it out.
They served the most fabulous food, fruit, nuts. They came round with big silver trays with almonds and raisins. And you know what? If you gave a guinea for the wedding, you were not doing badly. Oh, yes. Weddings were weddings in those years.
That was when we moved out of the East End.
It was a common pattern once you'd got married.
We'd already seen the better side of life. We'd been to dances, the West End. We'd been to hotels. You saw a better way of life than what you'd had at home. Nicer surroundings, with bathrooms and toilets.
So, of course, it was something that you wanted.
We found a house, a lovely little house, and we budgeted how much it would cost.
We put down £140 deposit, and it was a lovely little house with a garden at the back. We had the ground floor and there was a tenant upstairs.
So, we moved out of the East End.
The East End now is nothing like it used to be. It was a struggle. We were always short. But there was a great deal of sharing, trust between people. We cared. It was such a lovely atmosphere, a Jewish atmosphere, such a homely affair. Do you know what? It's done me good to come here today and talk about the old days.